So what's a good icebreaker question for a meeting? That's what we're going to cover in this video. I'm going to share why it matters, because there's actually some really interesting research, both kind of academic as well as from high-performing teams at Google, okay, that getting this psychology right is really powerful predictor of performance. And then I'm going to share 3 icebreakers with kind of some of the conceptual understanding behind them, which then you can use to inform and create your own. So let's get into it. As we get started, my name's Jackson Kirchis. I'm a former Zen monk and startup executive. I created the world's first major in happiness studies, and I now spend my time bringing happiness and human flourishing research into organizations, everyone from military, police, first responders to businesses and nonprofits. So on this channel, you'll find more about how to be at your best in work and in life. So why does this matter? Okay, so let's back up here. We can think about like what makes for high performing teams, right? And we know, kind of based on academic research and just common sense, that trust and connection are the foundation for working well with one another. If you've ever been on a team where people just kind of don't really get along, don't really trust each other, it's often just totally unproductive. Further to this point, Gallup, it's one of the world leading organizations on workplace research, okay? And they look at engagement, which is a measure of interest, enthusiasm, and commitment to one's work and how that translates into job performance. One of the top predictors they find for engagement is connection. Do you have a best friend at work, for instance? If you answer yes to that question, you are 7x, 700% more engaged. We can take this a step further. So Google did something called Project Aristotle many years ago. In fact, it's kind of weird because for a while you could find a couple like white paper summaries on it, but now if you Google it, like you can't really find the primary documents from Google. It seems like they like hid them or something. I don't know, but it had really good insights. Basically what they took was 150 different teams all across the company, and they wanted to understand what really makes for high performance. And they found that it wasn't about who was on the team, how many years of experience they had, what their budget were, what their technical capabilities were, what their dress code was. It was psychological safety. Now, this is sort of a overly formal academic term, which means that an environment is safe for interpersonal risk-taking. I can ask a question. I can try something new. I can admit I don't know something. I can share a mistake. I can even disagree with you and have some productive, respectful conflict. So you start to distinguish between, right, maybe just trusting connection is like, hey, you know, we're friends here. Yeah, I like my coworkers, versus all that being true, but also being able to say, I'm willing to hold my peers accountable when they're not meeting the standard, or I'm willing to speak up if someone's violating our shared agreements, or I'm willing to push the status quo and try something new and fail and know that I won't be punished for it or, embarrassed or like that's a stupid question type of thing. So all of this to say is that we need to create this psychological safety, trust, connection, and a little bit or a lot of bit of vulnerability to really team effectively. So last thing as we get into this, please, I'm gonna put you to work in this video, not telling you to subscribe and all my stuff and buy all my products, although if you wanna do that, please do. I'm gonna put you to work, and I want you to think about a better term than icebreaker, okay? Because I will say, I feel like the moment you say, hey, let's do an icebreaker, it's like everyone kind of looks around and it's like, how about no? I don't know what the best term is. You could say, hey, I want to do some connection time in our meeting, or some intentional development time, or get to know you moment. Again, if I were a smarter, wiser, better YouTuber, I would have come up with the term before making this video, but I have not. So you go to work, come up with a better term than icebreaker, and maybe down below in the comments, let me know what you come up with. All right, here we go. Number 1, best icebreaker question. It may seem kind of obvious, but I'll tell you out of background here. What's on your mind? And ideally, you can say something like, hey, in 1 sentence or less, or in 10 words, okay? What's on your mind? Or 15 seconds or less. Okay, here's the reason this is powerful. This is a really common question in executive coaching conversations. In fact, I just read a book called The Coaching Habit, where they use, that's one of their most powerful questions. And the reason that's so is because it's a little bit more focused and pointed than just, hey, how are you, right? Or, hey, what's going on? What's new? How was your weekend? How about this weather we're having? All those ways we typically start things, and they're just like, they don't really intentionally lead to anything. But at the same time, at the start of a meeting, and maybe as an icebreaker, we want to make it a bit more personal, a bit more thoughtful and provocative, so we can say, what's on your mind? Imagine if I were to ask you that. Hey, how are you? Hey, what's going on? Hey, how was your weekend? You may say, I'm pretty good. Yeah, not much, pretty busy. Oh yeah, weekend, we went on a hike. It was nice. Versus if I say, hey, what's on your mind? It's inviting it's still open, and it's not too much vulnerability, but it is allowing you to kind of pause, reflect, and be more thoughtful about what's true for you right now. So there's that personal dimension, or it could tee up what you want to talk about in that meeting to make the meeting more productive. So if you want to play with this question too, if you want it to be a more personal icebreaker, you could say something like, hey, outside of work, what's on your mind lately? If you want to make it more work or project focused, you can say, hey, as we think about the new marketing project, what's on your mind in 1 minute or less? Okay, then everyone goes around. So it's quick, efficiently open-ended, but not so open-ended like, how are you, that it's just kind of pointless. All right, number 2, and I use this on my sales calls. What are you excited about coming up? Ooh, that's pretty good, right? Again, because it's one level beyond just that, performative, transactional, what's new? How are you? Have you ever asked someone, how are you? And they've actually been like, anything thoughtful or interesting? Maybe like, actually, I'm doing terrible. Let me tell you about this. No. So this is just a little bit deeper, but what you're trying to do is prime the room for a more productive conversation. There's something called social emotional contagion, which explains how emotions are transmitted from human to human, or actually primate to primate for that matter. All higher order primates have that ability. But it's basically saying, like, if I show up and I look like I'm just ready to blow up, or someone gives you one of those, what are you doing in traffic? What do you do instinctually? You kind of like give them back, right? Like, hey, what's your problem? But at the same time, someone comes up to you and they smile and reach out a hand. What do? You shake their hand. So we have this kind of priming where we can sort of intentionally shift the emotional dynamics of a one-to-one interaction or a group of people. This question helps do that because you're guiding people's attention to, what are you excited about? And if you actually think through and visualize and process something you're excited about, you probably become more excited. So that creates a positive emotion and an activating or stimulating emotion to bring into that conversation. So, again, you can make that more personal. Hey, what's something you're excited about in your life in 2026? Or again, more work related. Hey, as you think about the next 3 months in your role, each person, let's share what's the thing you're most excited about. Not too bad. Okay, third one. I'm going to give you a couple versions of this, but one that I really like actually comes from a set of questions that are designed to make people become more intimate, let's say, in the sense of being vulnerable, not necessarily anything romantic. And it is this: if you could choose any person in the world to be your dinner guest for one night, who would it be? And you can add in something around, it can be dead or alive. It could be, again, you can narrow it based on the topics. You can say it could be an athlete. It could be a business person. It could be someone in your personal life. It could be an author, right? So there's many different ways to steer it. But the idea is, again, it's just a really interesting, thought-provoking question that invites a little bit more of a personal spin because you're getting to know what that person's real kind of interests are and maybe even some of their beliefs and values. If you want a more broad spin, because you don't want to do that one every week, right? You can imagine that there are different applications around this. Who is a author that you think is most interesting? Or what is a new idea you've learned recently that you found really interesting? Or hey, if you could pick out, someone you've always looked up to, who is that and why, right? But all of those really go back to a question around, hey, what are you interested in? Or what are you passionate about? Or hey, who's really influenced your view of life? So again, you can see where all three of those questions, it's not like I'm telling you, hey, tell me your deepest, darkest secret. Hey, tell me about a really traumatic, challenging experience you had. you know, right? They're not quite that extreme, but it's a little bit more vulnerability inducing to say, yeah, you know, I'm really passionate about this, or, you know, I've looked up to this person, or, you know, this is a value or a theme or a part of my faith or whatever that's really had an impact on me as a person. Okay. So there are a few ideas, you know, what's on your mind with all the different ways you can spend that. And especially if you want to add like, you know, in 3 sentences or less, what are you excited about? Again, that can be work or life, whatever. Gets them in the right state. And then who would you want as your dinner guest? Or again, something around getting that person, each person I should say, to share a bit more about what their interests and passions are. All right, and remember, if you do all that, you're helping to create psychological safety, which is the foundation for better performing teams. So thank you for watching. If you want more free resources, you can check them out below, or go to happinessmeansbusiness.com/resources. If you're interested in the more like personal happiness nerd stuff that I do, that's less like organizations and business, check out happinessphd.com. Also a bunch of free resources there. And there are a bunch of not free resources where you can give me or someone else's money to me in small or large quantities. Okay, I'm teasing you, but that's true. This is a full-time business for me, so a lot of resources out there to support you guys. So thank you again for watching. I'm wishing you happiness and success. This has been Jackson Kirchis, and I'll see you next time.